Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Fantasy Football Week 12 wide receiver and tight end rankings. Today, I've decided to combine both the wide receiver and tight end video of the week in order to give myself a break and to bring you guys the information that is required all in one video so you guys can pretty much get all of your wide receiver / tight ends information as soon as you possibly can. So how is the schedule going to break down? I'm going to be going over the wide receiver matchups for Week 12, followed by my 1 through 36 wide receiver rankings. Then after that, I'm going to go over the tight end matchups and follow that with the 1 through 18 tight end rankings. And before we begin, I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. This will probably be the last time I make a video until Friday's Hidden Gems. So have a fantastic Thanksgiving. Hope everybody enjoys their Thursday. And yeah, that Thursday 3-game back-to-back football, it's going to be a good one. So before we begin, I just want to thank all of you guys who have subscribed. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button for more content on the daily, bringing you guys fantasy football information, news, rankings, and all the above until the rest of the season. And if you have any questions and you don't feel like hitting up the comment section because I don't respond quick enough and you can't wait till Saturday to get a response, Twitter is also an option. Okay, hey everybody, how's it going? Before we begin, I just want to go over a couple things really quickly. Number one, specifically in the comment section, if you go and you post a comment, please, like let's say for example you shoot me a question, I answer it, then you have a follow-up question. I can generally reply to those questions, but if you ask a question on somebody else's question, like let's say for example, I don't know, viewer A says, Andrew, should I start A or B? And I say B, okay? Then you come out of nowhere and you comment on that saying, Andrew, A or B, for a different question. I'm not going to answer that. Just post a completely new question. And also another thing about questions, if you guys have a question saying, hey, OJ Howard is out, who should I pick up? Well, I don't know who's on your waivers. You got to give me something, right? That's why the people who have hit me up on Twitter, it's been extremely easy to answer your questions. You guys send me screenshots of your ESPN leagues, your Yahoo leagues, your NFL.com leagues, and it's really easy because I can see your lineup. I can see your waivers that you've taken a screenshot of. Boom, it's easy, quick, and then I get your responses. But those of you on YouTube, if you shoot me a question, please make sure you give me all the background information, PPR, standard scoring, who is available. If you're looking for me to suggest a guy to pick up, you got to give me some names. You got to help me out. I can't just throw out names because what if, a guy that's better than, a guy that's generally better is available, but I'm not mentioning him because I'm assuming he's picked up, right? Anyway, those are just a couple of my thoughts as we continue throughout the season. But we'll get used to it. Eventually, everything will be flawless, and we'll work out the kinks. This is the first year of me doing this, so it's a learning process. Okay. Anyway, so now that we've gone over that, let's talk about wide receivers. What we're really here to talk about. Okay, so to begin, we're gonna go over the wide receiver matchups for Week 12 of the fantasy football season. All right, so who gives up the most points to the wide receiver position in half-point PPR scoring? As a reminder, half-point PPR scoring is exactly what I rank everything, and statistically, when I give you stats for fantasy points, everything is half-point PPR scoring. I kind of try to meet everybody in the middle, whether you play standard or full PPR. I thought half-point PPR is the best way to communicate it. Okay, so let's talk about the matchups. All right, the team that gives up the most points to the wide receiver position on a weekly basis, it is the New Orleans Saints. But here's the thing, the New Orleans Saints, as of late, have been really good on defense. The last 2 weeks have only given up 21 total points, 7 to the Eagles this past week and 14 the week prior to the Bengals. The Eagles were just a mess this past week. I don't think the performance that they had put up is something that we can point to and say, hey, they're going to be terrible all the rest of the season. They're definitely not as good as they were last season when Carson Wentz was, throwing 30-plus touchdowns. But as of right now, let's talk about the New Orleans Saints playing against the Atlanta Falcons on Thursday Night Football, the night game. I think I mean, this is the best matchup for Matt Ryan as of right now. Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu, Calvin Ridley, Austin Hooper, and Tevin Coleman. These guys are going to be able to prosper from the matchup. We've seen them have a shootout earlier on in the season. The current over-under for this matchup is 60 points, if I'm not mistaken. Again, earlier in the week, earlier in the week, that Monday night game was a 64-point over-under. Ended up at 105, but that's a different scenario, right? You had the two highest scoring offenses. But then again, I always talk about the NFC South. That is a division where points are just traded. Defenses they don't really care. It's a shootout kind of a division. That's probably what's going to happen. I like the Falcons going into this matchup this week. They have the best matchup wide receiver-wise. Other than them, the Eagles giving up the second most points to the fantasy wide receiver position. I expect Odell Beckham to be fine. Sterling Shepard was a disappointment this past week, but that's mainly because they just really didn't need him. Eli Manning was 17 of 18 passing this past week, and he was absolutely perfect. Yes, a lot of them were checkdowns to Saquon and short passes to Evan Ingram, but still he was pretty consistent. I don't think anybody besides Odell can be depended on going forward, and especially in this week. So you'll see it from my rankings, but as of right now, Odell will probably be able to be the only one to act upon that opportunity. Moving on, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers give up a lot of points. We know that for a fact. They give up the most points to the quarterback position on a weekly basis. They're giving up a bunch of points to the running back position. Also, the tight end position, the wide receiver position. This defense is terrible. So who can we start from the 49ers? Maybe Marquise Goodwin. Other than that, maybe it's just going to be George Kittle and Breida just tearing it apart. Moving on, the Tennessee Titans. Again, as I mentioned, people, these corners of the Tennessee Titans, they're fake. They're not good. They're giving up the fourth most points to the wide receiver position on a weekly basis. I mean, it's pretty plain and simple. I expected this to happen last week. I expected T.Y. Hilton to be able to expose these guys, and that's exactly what I think Hopkins, Keke Coutee, potentially Demaryius Thomas is going to be able to do this week. They're going to be able to exploit this secondary and be able to play well. Other than them, let's see, the Atlanta Falcons giving up the fifth most points. That's just music to our ears if you own Michael Thomas, Tre'Quon Smith, etc. But we know the Falcons aren't great at stopping anybody defensively. Sometimes they play well. Only allowing Dallas 22 points, that's a great job. But then again, against the wide receiver position, against a team like the New Orleans Saints, who are just humming offensively, it's going to be tough to stop them. Cincinnati Bengals give up a bunch of points. We'll talk about who on the Browns is going to be able to step up this week. The New York Jets give up a bunch of points. Obviously, the Patriots will take advantage of that. The Rams are on a bye week. The Packers give up a bunch of points. Kirk Cousins, the last time we saw him play against the Packers, it was a shootout. I expected to be the same. It will be in Minnesota this coming week. Yes, many of you may be thinking, okay, this is going to be a tough matchup, but to be honest, I think Minnesota will be able to put up enough points. I like Kirk Cousins this coming week, and having Thielen and Diggs on the outside. Diggs performed this past week because of that last drive against the Chicago Bears on Sunday Night Football. If you didn't catch those 6 passes and that touchdown, his week wouldn't have been as great. Adam Thielen didn't look good, but I expect Adam Thielen to come back with a better performance this coming week. The Cleveland Browns are another team. Hopefully, A.J. Green plays. I'll talk about it in a little bit, but it's a great matchup for that offense. If A.J. Green can come back, it'll help guys like Boyd and Ross be able to, even perform better than they have in the last couple weeks, which for Boyd, that would be something of that at least would excite owners as of right now, because those of us who own Boyd, he's not doing anything. Tyler Boyd's just kind of just been a mess without A.J. Green out there, and then Ross has kind of been stepping up, taking some touchdowns on 4 catches. Moving on, the mid-tier teams, the Bears, the Lions, Redskins, 49ers, Oakland Raiders. I'm starting people again. I'm not worried about this, right? This is not something that I'm technically worried about. Like, these are just teams that give up passing yards. I mean, the margin difference between the 22 team and the 11 team is what? 4 points? Like, okay, 4 points. That's in a PPR. That's literally 4 catches. I mean, what difference does it make, right? But let's look at the matchups that are quite difficult on wide receivers this coming season, or this season thus far. The Buffalo Bills are giving up the least points to the wide receiver position. Now, that being said, that's mainly because there haven't been many passing touchdowns against the Bills because they're allowing a lot on the ground. They're allowing touchdowns from the running back position. On top of that, they're also allowing a lot of defensive points when the Bills throw pick sixes, they fumble it, and the other team scores. So the Bills, yes, they're not allowing a lot of points to the wide receiver position. Don't get me wrong, this defense has looked good at times this season, but I don't think it's completely accurate to say, hey, well, actually, it might be because the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receivers, I don't trust any of them. So let's take the advice of the points given up, and let's not touch any Jacksonville wide receivers this week. Speaking of Jacksonville, they play against the Bills, and the Jacksonville Jaguars don't also give up many points to the wide receiver position. Not a surprise. Jalen Ramsey, AJ Boye locking down wide receivers over there. And, I'm not really excited about starting a Zay Jones or a Benjamin this coming week, so I'd probably leave those guys out. Dallas Cowboys have been stout in their secondary. I mean, they've looked good. This past week, yes, Julio did some damage, but they basically stopped all the bleeding that could have possibly taken place. They looked good against that Atlanta offense to the extent to where I'm pretty confident that this coming week against Colt McCoy really doesn't have many offensive weapons surrounding him. He doesn't have an offensive line. There's a reason why Alex Smith broke his leg. All right. If you don't let that guy get to the quarterback, maybe he doesn't fall on him in that way. But instead, we have an entire backup offensive line. Where this statistic, which was insane. The Redskins this past week with Alex Smith at quarterback, while he was still in the game, gave up 25 pressures to the quarterback. The offensive line gave up 25 pressures in one game. Okay? That was more than 5 other NFL teams combined. I don't remember the team's name. It was like the Colts were one of them for sure because the Colts don't give up any pressure. But the fact of the matter is they were giving up pressure galore. And this coming week, I don't know about any Redskins wide receivers. Just another group of guys that just haven't looked great. Vikings are good against the wide receiver, obviously. Xavier Rhodes locking people down. The Baltimore Ravens in that secondary. Jimmy Smith, Eric Weddle looking good. The Texans, Jonathan Joseph, Tyrann Mathieu locking it down. The Colts somehow continue to be a team that don't give up a lot of points in fantasy, and it's been able to show. I mean, they're winning games. They have won their last couple games, and yes, they haven't been against amazing competitors, but then again, this defense has looked decent at times. And with Blaine Gabbert, who I expect to be at quarterback for the Titans, it's going to be tough for the Titans to move the ball. The Chargers themselves, the Cardinals, the Dolphins. Okay. Otherwise, I mean, we'll go over the rankings. These are just my matchups, just kind of glossing over them, getting my idea on who I could potentially start, maybe not start, how the matchups look. Now that we've familiarized ourselves with this, let's go into the rankings. Again, this is a shorter video. Just want to get through it so that you guys can get your information. Can't really sit here and talk for an hour, even though I've done that in the past for sure. And I'm comfortable with doing that. But as of right now, we're on a holiday schedule. Everything is a little bit busier, so we got to make sure we get these done and get your lineup set for tomorrow morning and for Sunday, so we can pick up some much needed wins. Many of us who are sitting out here thinking, hey, we're on that fringe. We're trying to get in as that 8th seed, trying to get in as that 6th seed. Maybe we're trying to get that first round bye going into playoffs. These are going to matter, right? So let's go over it. All right, here are my top 36 rankings, starting with the top 18. Number 1 is Michael Thomas. The guy's been incredible. As of late, has been fantastic. He's been the leading wide receiver of this New Orleans Saints offense that has been incredible. I mean, to be honest, other than Tyreek Hill, I think he's the second most fantasy points to the wide receiver position thus far this season. Statistically, he's just been filling up the stat sheet. When it comes to fantasy points, the last couple weeks, 33, 23, 17. He only had 4 catches this past week, but to be honest, it didn't really matter because those 4 catches racked him up 17 fantasy points. Michael Thomas, in my opinion, especially going up against this easy matchup in the Falcons defense is going to have himself some success. He's my number 1 for sure this coming week. And yeah, he's starting for many of us. Number 2, we have Julio Jones. Again, speaking of this wonderful matchup, Julio Jones is going to get his. He's had 3 games in a row with a touchdown. That is fantastic considering the first 3 games of the season, the first 8 weeks, Julio Jones didn't have a touchdown recorded. And as he's beginning to get more and more comfortable and Matt Ryan continues to find him in the end zone, his value continues to skyrocket. As of right now, this coming week, playing against the worst secondary against the wide receiver position thus far this season, I like him as my number 2, and he should have a good Turkey Day game. All right, number 3, Adam Thielen. Now, many of us struggled this past week with the option that Adam Thielen, he didn't look, amazing. We've gotten accustomed to this. Adam Thielen is going to drop 20 for us. Well, sometimes he drops 10, and it happens. They played against a tougher defense. Overall, Kirk Cousins was struggling because of the pass rush and the pressure that he consistently got. Forced, basically, Adam Thielen to be an option that really wasn't looked at. Kirk Cousins, that second interception that he threw in that game was because Adam Thielen was getting double covered. When they put a safety over the top and you can only read so much, Kirk Cousins is bound to make mistakes. That's why he looked towards Stefon Diggs the rest of the game. This coming week against the Packers, I don't think the Packers secondary is good enough to be able to stop Adam Thielen. He'll have a successful week, and I expect him to be as good as he's been all season long. And he's my number 3 this coming week. Number 4, we have DeAndre Hopkins. Like I've mentioned before in the past, the Tennessee Titans defense and their secondary, and not their defense, their secondary, just specifically Adoree Jackson, Malcolm Butler, Eric Rowe, those 3 guys, they're booty, they're trash. DeAndre Hopkins will be able to expose them this coming week. He's going to have a fantastic fantasy week, and he's going to put up a lot of points. I'm not thinking, he's putting up 32 fantasy points like T.Y. did this past week, but I'm thinking he'll be better than he was last week. I'm assuming he'll get around 20 fantasy points. That's what that's what I'm eyeing as of right now. Moving on, we have number 5, Antonio Brown. Now, Antonio Brown, I wanted to mention this because it's absolutely insane. Thus far this season, Antonio Brown has caught a touchdown in every single game except for 1. In week 2 against the Kansas City Chiefs, he did not catch a touchdown. Every other game, he has caught at least 1 touchdown. Now, you may be thinking, wow, okay, Andrew, that's amazing. Every single game, he's caught a touchdown except for 1? That's incredible. Yes, it is. Yet we don't talk about it enough. Why don't we talk about it enough? Have we just become spoiled with Antonio Brown? Is that the case? Like we've become accustomed to the performance that he's going to put up. Like as of the last couple weeks, 25, 19, 22, 12, 18, 20. We've become accustomed to this idea that Antonio Brown's going to ball out every single week. We don't even have to talk about it. Yes, he plays against the Denver Broncos this week. I just expect him to be a little bit lower when it comes to fantasy value just because they're going to use James Conner a little bit more, but it doesn't matter. He's starting on your team. He's your best wide receiver. Fire him up. Let's go. All right, number 6, we have Mike Evans. With the return of Jameis Winston, it really doesn't matter who's at quarterback. Just the fact of the matter is, Jameis Winston, as soon as he came in the game, he was able to feed the ball to Mike Evans like he needs to be on a weekly basis. Mike Evans, yes, he had that extra touchdown that he recovered a fumble in the end zone. That didn't really go into my decision-making here. It didn't matter that he scored 25 this past week. I know that Jameis Winston is going to be able to feed him the ball, and especially against this pretty poor secondary themselves, the 49ers, they're not going to be able to stop Mike Evans. I expect him to have himself a good week. He's my number 6. Number 7, Davante Adams. I still have confidence in him, even though he's playing against Xavier Rhodes. Earlier this season, he's proven to us that he can play against top-notch corners like this and be able to produce. Last time he played against Minnesota, had 16.5 fantasy points and half-point PPR scoring because it didn't really matter. When you're getting 10-plus targets a week, you're getting, at least 60% of the balls, you're catching them. That's exactly the recipe for success, especially when you're down in the red zone and you're getting majority of the targets. You're eventually going to be able to find yourself open and make plays. I love him this coming week despite the matchup. He's my number 7 this coming week. Number 8, we have Odell Beckham. As I mentioned before, he is probably going to be the only successful wide receiver of the Giants this coming week playing against the Eagles. Yes, it's a good matchup, but other than Odell, really just there hasn't been much. Sterling Shepard hasn't looked great since that Falcons game. And I don't trust Eli enough to be able to spread the ball to multiple targets outside of Ingram, Saquon, and Odell. So Odell, you're my number 8. You should have a good week this week. Number 9, we have Stefon Diggs. As I mentioned before, Adam Thielen is going to be having a bounce back week. On top of it, the Packers secondary has not been great this season. I expect Kirk Cousins and this offense to be exploiting that defense as much as they can. That will also include Stefon Diggs getting a lot of targets, a lot of receptions, and a lot of fantasy points. He's my number 9 this week. I have a lot of confidence in him, especially because of the fact that you have to pick your poison. I've mentioned this in the past. You're either going to have to double cover Adam Thielen or double cover Stefon Diggs. You have to pick your poison. And even when you do, these guys are so good that they're going to be able to be successful no matter what. So he's my number 9 this week. Number 10, we have T.Y. Hilton, who had a monster week this past week, plays against the Miami Dolphins defense this coming week. Now, here's the thing. Many of us may be thinking, okay, well, the Miami Dolphins defense, who is their lockdown corner? It's Xavier Howard. Can T.Y. Hilton be able to, lose the pressure of him and be able to find himself open? I think a lot of this game is going to be dependent on the running game. Marlon Mack is going to have a fantastic game. The Miami Dolphins defense, they give up a ton of points to the running back position. That's only going to set up play action, set up passing to Doyle and Ebron, and then eventually T.Y. Hilton will get involved. He'll continue to be as good as he was. Not 32 points, because that's an outlier, but I expect a good 15 points from him this coming week in half-point PPR scoring formats. Other than that, he is the number 1 wide receiver of an offense, and Andrew Luck has been on fire as of late. So, T.Y. Hilton, you're my number 10. Number 11, all right, now I have an asterisk next to A.J. Green's name, specifically because A.J. Green has been dealing with a toe injury, did not practice earlier today, Wednesday, the 21st of November, but Marvin Lewis in his press conference had mentioned that there is a good opportunity that he either practices Thursday or Friday. We'll get a little bit more information on that, but again, as I mentioned before, rankings are subject to change. So here's my thought process behind this. If he plays this coming week, they play against the Cleveland Browns secondary, who hasn't been great this season. So I expect A.J. Green to be, if he's able to play, it's because he's fully healthy. They're not going to rush him back. He is, they have no reason to. They're not looking to, if we lose a game here, we're out of the playoffs. They're not even in the playoff picture as of right now. So as of the ideas behind it, they're not going to rush him back. We'll get a little bit more information as the week continues. But if we get validation that he is going to play, I expect him to be my number 11 this coming week. So do with that as you may. All right, number 12, we have Keenan Allen, who's been on fire as of late, finding the end zone, getting a bunch of targets. It's working out. Keenan Allen had a rough start to the beginning of the season. This last 3 weeks, 19.5, 14.7, and 18.2. I can't read. That's what happens when there's a bright light in your face. You can see the reflection off my glasses. Anyway, Keenan Allen this coming week, playing against the Cardinals defense and Patrick Peterson. I'm not sure if that's technically a matchup that we should be afraid of or be shying against. We've seen Patrick Peterson give up at times throughout the season, and to be honest, this team they're not really playing for much other than pride and a paycheck. So I expect Keenan Allen to be able to abuse that defense. He's my number 12 this week. Number 13, Kenny Golladay. I mean, he is pretty much the only offensive weapon on that team that I can trust, right? With Marvin Jones out for the second consecutive week and Kerryon Johnson earlier today had been basically stated as out due to that knee injury he sustained this past week, I expect Kenny Golladay to get pretty much all the targets. Other than, Theo Riddick here and there, it's going to be Kenny Golladay. And yes, the Bears are going to try to stop him, but I don't think the corners, they're going to double cover him. But eventually, after Matthew Stafford throws a couple pick sixes and the garbage time rolls around, Kenny Golladay will find himself some fantasy value. He'll be great. All right, number 14, we have Juju Smith-Schuster. Again, a guy that I love Juju Smith-Schuster. He is fantastic, being such a young receiver and being able to produce on a weekly basis just because he's put in a successful situation. He's surrounded by great offensive weapons and a great offense as a whole. The team is gelling as of right now. They've won, 6 consecutive games, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And as of late, he has been pretty great. fantasy-wise this past week, had 10 targets, which I expected him to at least get a little bit more targets this past week because of the fact that they might be looking at Antonio Brown as the guy that they wanted to double cover, and Juju Smith was able to step up this coming week against the Broncos. Again, it's the same kind of deal. They're going to put more pressure on Antonio Brown's side. Juju will get open more, and he'll find some fantasy success. He's my number 14. Number 15, Jarvis Landry. Okay, now, here's my thought process. Where did we draft Jarvis Landry? We pretty much drafted him where many of us probably regret drafting him at this point. Like, we expected Jarvis Landry to be, I'm going to catch the ball 100 times, I'm going to get 1,000 yards receiving, and I'm going to have a handful of touchdowns, right? That's what we expected. At least a wide receiver 2, perhaps a wide receiver 1, just depending on what kind of opinion you had. But as of late, Jarvis Landry has not been great. The offense of this team has relied a lot upon Nick Chubb and Duke Johnson to make them majority of their plays. Hopefully this bye week has kind of awarded them some time off. They can maybe clear their minds because Jarvis Landry is still averaging just around 10 targets a week. As of late, hasn't been great. We know that for a fact. But I have a hard time thinking that he won't be able to find success against the Cincinnati Bengals secondary. A secondary that is giving up a bunch of points to the wide receiver position and a defense that is not great as of this season. So as of right now, I think Jarvis Landry, he could really have a breakout game here. I'd have a hard time sitting him this week because of the matchup, the amount of targets he receives, and the fact that the Cleveland Browns are obviously going to get a lot of points on that board. It could be a back and forth trading between the two offenses. I like Jarvis Landry this week as my number 15. Number 16, Doug Baldwin, the return. Last week, all he needed was one good game to show us that he actually had what it took. That knee injury wasn't bothering him. Fantastic. He proved it against the Packers this past week. Should have had 2 touchdowns, but it doesn't matter. He ended up scoring still. And to be honest, he'll continue to be able to contribute to this to this offense and score fantasy points for his owners. You drafted him for a reason. Hopefully you'll be able to act upon an opportunity. Put him in your lineups for this week. He's my number 16. Number 17, Emmanuel Sanders. All right, here's the thing about Emmanuel Sanders. Here's the thing about the passing offense of the Denver Broncos. It's really tough to trust the idea that, okay, on a weekly basis, we can put our faith in Case Keenum's hands to get Emmanuel Sanders the ball. As of late, in the last 4 weeks, Emmanuel Sanders hasn't had more than 9 targets. I've been quoted to say earlier this season, if Emmanuel Sanders does not get 10 to 14 targets, I don't want to play him. Right? This coming week, plays against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. They give up a bunch of points in the passing game. They're great against the run. The Denver Broncos are a run-first team. They're going to be pushed to their limit, right? They're going to have to step out of their comfort zone. They're going to have to use play action. They're going to have to pass the ball to Emmanuel Sanders over the middle, and I expect him to have a good week. I feel like Emmanuel Sanders hasn't been given as much opportunity as he was earlier on in the season when Demaryius Thomas was there. So hopefully we can turn this ship around and get him some more fantasy value. But as of right now, I still have some confidence in him, and I like the matchup enough to where I would throw him out there as at least a number 2 wide receiver. He's my number 17. Number 18, we have Julian Edelman against the New York Jets defense. Not a great defense. Julian Edelman, ever since coming back, has just been able to take over as the lead wide receiver of this offense. Yes, they've brought in Josh Gordon, but since the absence of Sony Michel, the absence of Rob Gronkowski within this offense, the injuries that took place, he's just been able to step up every single week. I expect him to have a good week himself here. He's my number 18. All right, let's move on to the last 18 wide receivers I wanted to talk about for the Week 12 of the fantasy football season. We're going to start off with number 19, Alshon Jeffery, playing against the New York Giants. Here's the thing about Jeffery. He's been absolute garbage as of late. You would expect this offense to feed him the ball at a premium, just like 8 times a game, throw him the rock. But we haven't seen much of that. This last couple weeks, 5 targets, 8 targets, 5 targets. Why? What are we doing here? Alshon Jeffery is not a receiver that is going to get yards after the catch. He's going to catch the ball, and he's going to try to get a couple yards here and there because of his stature, his size. He won't go down after first contact, but then after that, he's hitting the ground. He's not going to be able to bust off a 70-yard, receiving touchdown. That's not his forte. As of right now, Alshon Jeffery is a guy that needs 10 targets. He needs to be able to at least use his size and his matchups as his advantage and find himself in the red zone, which the Eagles haven't found themselves as of the last couple weeks. This past week got completely destroyed by the Saints. The week prior, the Cowboys held them down as best as they could. So hopefully Alshon Jeffery this week with a pretty advantageous matchup can turn the ship around. I mean, if by all means, if Mike Evans and Jameis Winston can figure it out, I'm pretty sure Carson Wentz and Alshon Jeffery can figure it out, okay? I have some confidence in him. He should be good. He's my number 19. Number 20, we have Tyler Boyd. Okay, now here's the thing. If A.J. Green does not play, Tyler Boyd, rankings are subject to change, correct? He would be he'd be behind DJ Moore. I'm not even playing. I am that afraid as of right now. With Tyler Boyd's production as of late, the fact that he hasn't been able to do much of anything since A.J. Green disappeared. I mean, the last 2 weeks, 8 points and 9 points. It's not great. In half-point PPR, when you're getting 11 targets, I'm just a little worried. But hopefully A.J. Green plays, because if he does, Tyler Boyd's going to be relevant. He'll be my number 20. Number 21, Josh Gordon. I expect him to be decent. He continues to get more and more work. He continues to get more and more targets. He's built a rapport with Tom Brady. And hopefully, here's the thing about Josh Gordon. He's very touchdown dependent. Now, it is a good enough matchup where they can score 40 points on the Jets and walk out and, no big deal, piece of cake. Let's go and move on to the next week. But I think Josh Gordon could end up finding himself catching touchdowns this week. Even if he doesn't, he'll get about 10 targets, 9 targets, probably like 6 catches, 9 targets, 70-some-odd yards. Should be pretty decent. The touchdown upside's there, though. All right, number 22, Amari Cooper, the number 1 wide receiver of this offense, going against the secondary that has been giving up a lot of points as of late to the wide receiver position. The Washington Redskins defense and secondary as of late has been a little bit shaky. And I think Amari Cooper could be able to exploit that tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. Oh, my God, I cannot wait. Tomorrow, baby, on Thursday Night Football. He's my number 22. 23, Tyler Lockett, a guy that's been consistent all season long. Yes, even when he doesn't catch touchdowns, he is still a 10-point guy. So just like Josh Gordon, these guys have touchdown upside. That's why they're higher up on these rankings because, yes, they're going to get the targets. They're going to get the yards. All they need is that touchdown, and it makes them that much better. It makes them a 16, 15-point wide receiver on a weekly basis. Tyler Lockett's my number 23. 24 is wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald, Larry Fitz legend. Oh, my goodness. This past week, only 2 catches, but 2 touchdowns. That's fantastic. That means down in the goal line, when Byron Leftwich is calling the offense, he knows where to go. He knows to get the ball to Larry Fitzgerald. Many of you may be thinking, but what about Christian Kirk? He's a rookie. He's been feasting as of late. His fantasy points that he scored as of the last 6 weeks have looked good. Here's the thing about Christian Kirk. He is a bursty wide receiver. If you can get the ball to him in open space, he can go for 70 yards. He can do it, and that's what he's done. So maybe, in my opinion, his statistics are a little blown out of proportion when he goes and catches 100 yards and 1 catch was for 75 and a touchdown. That pretty much kind of inflates it. But Larry Fitzgerald, he's going to continue to get targets, continue to get receptions, continue to be used in the red zone. I like him as my number 24 this week. Number 25, Allen Robinson. Now, if Allen Robinson is going to have Mitchell Trubisky as his quarterback, I expect him to be a little bit higher than 25. We saw Allen Robinson come back 2 weeks ago and completely torch the secondary of the Detroit Lions. Now, the word on the street is Mitchell Trubisky will not be playing. It will be Chase Daniels. That is what I have rankings-wise. If Chase Daniels is the quarterback, I don't think he's terrible. He's been a backup his entire career, and he's been decent, in fact. So the deal is Allen Robinson would be about 25, so a high-end wide receiver 3 flex option for this coming week if Chase Daniels is the quarterback. Otherwise, if Trubisky's the quarterback, he's way higher. He's probably like sitting around 18 or 17 for this coming week. Moving on, Corey Davis, another guy that with Blaine Gabbert, I don't expect much. But if he's with Marcus Mariota, expect some good things. Even with Blaine Gabbert, we've seen Blaine Gabbert used Corey Davis more than any other receiver earlier on this season when they were matched up together. So hopefully that can end up doing something. But then again, they're playing against a tough defense. So we'll see how that goes. Moving on, we have Tre'Quon Smith at number 27. Having his breakout week this past week was insane in fantasy. 14 targets, 10-plus receptions, 157 receiving yards, and a touchdown. I don't expect him to completely go off like that again. He has been questionable, hasn't been practicing earlier this week, so hopefully he'll be healthy for tomorrow. If he is not, then I don't know. Maybe Brandon Marshall could be decent. We'll see. Number 28, DJ Moore. Hopefully he's getting to the point where he can be the number 1 wide receiver of this team. I honestly think DJ Moore could be higher, but there's also a chance that Cam Newton and this offense, they struggle because Cam Newton, he'll use guys like Greg Olsen and Christian McCaffrey, usually. Okay, those are 2 guys that we can guarantee. Devin Funchess has been garbage as of late. This past week, DJ Moore was fantastic. But there's also guys like Jarius Wright. There's guys like Curtis Samuel that take away fantasy value from these wide receivers. So that's why I'm putting DJ Moore a little bit lower. I'm not fully buying in because there's always chances that other guys come in and they steal fantasy value from him. Number 29, we have Adam Humphries, a guy that has been on fire as of late. And to be honest, when not Marcus Mariota, the other guy that was drafted before him in that draft, Jameis Winston, is on the field and is the starting quarterback, he loves to use Adam Humphries a lot. Okay, we've seen it in the past. We've seen it in seasons past. In fact, these last 2 seasons prior, he has used Adam Humphries a lot. And I think since Adam Humphries has been a usual part of this offense, even with Fitzpatrick the last couple weeks, I think he can have some fantasy value this week as a flex start in a PPR. Moving on, we have Keke Coutee at number 30. Has proven himself to be a valuable part of this offense. Looking healthy. He's come back after 4 weeks off. Was used, 9 targets, 5 receptions, 70-some-odd yards. Had a good week against the secondary of the Tennessee Titans. Should be able to find some good value, even though he's playing in the slot. I expect him to do pretty well this week. Number 31, Calvin Ridley. Okay, now here was my thought process. What are the chances that Mohamed Sanu steals a touchdown from Calvin Ridley or vice versa? I think it's pretty high. Now, I didn't want to rank both of them up into this top 36 rankings because really I don't trust them enough. They haven't been great as of late. So where am I sitting as of right now? I'll probably say Calvin Ridley at 31 as of right now. Could be a decent spot. He is a wide receiver 3 flex start for this coming week at best. So we'll leave it at that. He's my number 31. Number 32, we have Devin Funchess, who, as I've mentioned before, has been terrible. I mean, Devin Funchess has been softer than some Hawaiian bread on Thanksgiving. He's just been awful. He's been so bad. But yet I still have to mention him because eventually he will make a play. He will have a 15-point fantasy week, and he could be decent. We'll see. Number 33, Anthony Miller. This is anticipating Trubisky doesn't play. He'll be at around 33. Now, if Trubisky plays, I can see him around 27, 6, maybe. Because he had a pop-off week 2 weeks ago against the Lions where he had 20-plus points with Trubisky at quarterback. They could redo that. They could recreate that this week. All right, moving on. Willie Snead, the only guy that is being used in this Lamar Jackson-led offense. They're not going to throw the ball deep. Lamar Jackson is not built for that right now. I don't think he's confident enough to throw the ball deep. So he'll continue to find the short and closest wide receiver, and that is Willie Snead. Number 35, Danny Amendola. With the return of Ryan Tannehill, we're hoping that Amendola will continue to be used within this offense. He's been valuable as of thus far this season for this Miami Dolphins-led offense. He is the primary slot, and that's exactly where Tannehill has shown that he likes to throw the ball in the past. Without Jakeem Grant, without what's that wide? I don't even remember his damn name. Oh my goodness, it's been that long since these side receivers of the Dolphins have been relevant. Either way, Danny Amendola should be decent. He's my number 35. Number 36, Coutland Sutton. As I mentioned before, the Denver Broncos offense, it is primarily run. Can Coutland Sutton be able to break out and find himself a good week? I'm not buying into it too much, but he could be a decent flex play. All right, we're moving on. We've been here about 40 minutes, no big deal. Geez, I didn't want to talk for an hour, so we're going to go through this pretty quickly because I know Many of us, we only have one tight end at the position on our roster, so you don't really have many options. So let's just go over the tight end matchups. Carolina Panthers are giving up the most points to the tight end position. Those of you who are crazy enough or bold enough to play Nick Vannett or Ed Dixon this week, go for it. Tampa Bay Buccaneers giving up a bunch of points. That means George Kittle will be a beast this week. Kansas City on a bye. The New England Patriots play against Herndon. We'll see if Chris Herndon can figure it out. The Bengals, okay, either way. I don't really want to go into this too deeply because, to be honest, I don't I don't want to talk about tight ends for too long. But let's talk about the tougher matchups just so we can go over this. Okay, so the Tennessee Titans have not given up a lot of points to the tight end position. They even proved it this past week with Jack Doyle only having 4 points. Eric Ebron sat with a goose egg. They were pretty good against the tight end position. But here's the thing. There's nobody on the the Texans that is going to be able to break out. No big deal. We're moving on. Number 31, the Saints are really good against the tight end position. Even with that, as of right now, I still feel like Austin Hooper is a guy that can potentially find himself scoring a touchdown this week. This offense has been good. Hooper continues to get more and more targets. Despite this matchup, I think he could be decent. Moving on, the Eagles have been pretty tough against the tight end position. Evan Ingram could be up against it this coming week. Keep an eye out on that. The Packers have been good against the tight end. I don't really trust Kyle Rudolph that much. He's been terrible. Honestly, they need to get a better tight end. I don't know if it's him, the offense, Kirk Cousins, but it hasn't worked. Moving on, the Jets have been tough against the tight end. Doesn't matter. If Gronkowski plays and he's healthy, the Jets are going to feel the wrath. I promise you that. Moving on, the Cardinals have been tough, but nobody's playing Antonio Gates this week. The Washington Redskins, no big deal. The Cowboys have no tight end since Witten left to Monday Night Football. The Bears have been tough against the tight end position. We'll see. Yeah, no, the Lions don't have a tight end. The Seahawks have been tough, but then again, Greg Olsen continues to find himself scoring touchdowns, so he'll eventually probably score a touchdown this week as well. Other than that, I'm looking up and down the board. Who's got good matchups? Denver giving up a bunch of points. That's Vance McDonald. That doesn't matter. David Njoku. We'll see. All right. Anyway, well, we're moving on. All right. Let's talk about these rankings, shall we? Before we begin, down here we have Jimmy Graham. Now, he broke his thumb this past week. I called it. I literally called it. On Monday Night Football, I saw, was it Monday or was it a Thursday? No, it was on Thursday. On Thursday Night Football, I recorded a video and I was like, yeah, I saw Jimmy Graham hurt himself. He left the game. Sorry to you fantasy owners, blah, blah, blah. He probably broke his thumb. Dude ended up breaking his thumb. It came out the next morning. Jimmy Graham has broken his thumb. All right, well, do not play him this week. I don't care even if he plays. Do not play him this week. That is why he's down here, just to mention him. All right, we're moving on. Let's talk about the rankings. George Kittle has been a stud all season. He plays against the second worst defense to the tight end position. It's pretty easy. When you're playing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and you've been as consistent as Kittle's been thus far this season, it's pretty easy to be able to say, hey, Kittle should be starting. He is a stud. He is your best tight end on your roster for sure, and he's going to have to get the start. They're nearly giving up, 14 points per game to the tight end position. On top of that, Kittle's just been a monster, so it's just going to be another breakout game for him. Number 2, we have Zach Ertz. Didn't have a great performance this past week, but it doesn't matter. Zach Ertz is one of the top 2 tight ends in the league next to him and Travis Kelce. George Kittle is making his argument. When we get into the 2019 draft the next year, when we're talking about tight ends, Kittle will be in that top 3 argument once Gronkowski retires. But as of right now, Zach Ertz, you have to start him. He's just a monster. He's capable of 40. I don't care what he's doing with 2 points on a Sunday night game. Doesn't make a difference. It's just an outlier. Usually he's 10-plus points a week, guaranteed. Moving on, number 3, speaking of Rob Gronkowski, if he plays, he is healthy. I like him a lot. You have to play Gronkowski. I don't care what it is. If you have a guy like Greg Olsen or Jack Doyle, you can go ahead and play those 2. But otherwise, Gronkowski he's too good. He's too capable of having that touchdown upside. He's too capable of being a 20-point guy to leave him on your bench when he's fully healthy. Coming off of a couple weeks and not playing in a bye week, he should be ready to go this week. Number 4, we have Greg Olsen. As I mentioned before, Greg Olsen has been scoring a bunch of touchdowns as of late. As of the last 5 weeks, he has scored 4 receiving touchdowns. Pretty good to me. Obviously, this past couple weeks hasn't been as good, hasn't been getting as many catches for many yards, but either way, he is a red zone target for Cam Newton. He is a guy that Cam will continue to trust in and continue to target in the red zone. That's exactly what we want as tight end owners. We want a guy that can catch the ball multiple times a game and have the touchdown upside. That's exactly what Greg Olsen is. He's my number 4. Number 5, we have Jack Doyle. He continued to get more targets this past week, more than Ebron, and he was able to at least act upon them. I expect Jack Doyle to continue because of the fact that he's getting more of a snap count. He's being used more within this offense. I expect him to continue to get more and more targets, more and more opportunity, and be a good enough tight end to be in your starting lineup this week. He's my number 5. Number 6, we have Austin Hooper that I've mentioned before. Yes, the Saints don't give up a lot of points to the tight end position, but I honestly have just a feel. I don't know why I feel this way. Have I seen Austin Hooper destroy the Saints before? Even when he played the Saints earlier this season, only had 6 fantasy points in half-point PPR. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I have a feeling this week that Austin Hooper, he's just going to be able to play out of his mind. So for those of you thinking, hey, I have Hooper or should I play Burton? I just have a feeling. Now, if you think that Trey Burton is better, go for it. Because honestly, the difference between a 6 and a 7 in these rankings is it's not big of a deal. It's not a big deal. All right, moving on. We have Trey Burton, as I mentioned, playing against the Lions tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, sharp, ready to go. Here's the thing. If Trubisky's not the quarterback, I honestly don't think it's going to hurt him much. I think Chase Daniel will be able to find him. He'll be able to continue to get his targets. I think he'll be fine either way. He's my number 7. Number 8, David Njoku, playing against the Cincinnati Bengals defense, who give up, in fact, the 5th most points to the tight end position. They have been terrible against the tight end, and I expect David Njoku to come back, have some good fantasy value, have some opportunity, and be able to produce and act upon that opportunity. He's my number 8. Number 9, we have Eric Ebron. I'm not pushing Eric Ebron out the door yet. I expect him to still have some value. I could see Eric Ebron scoring a touchdown this week. But the fact that he is not the only tight end in this offense and in this rotation just gives him a little bit less value because Jack Doyle is getting those intermediate passing yards, those couple extra targets that Ebron was usually being able to rack up. So without that, Ebron, he sits on the sideline for a majority of the game, comes in a couple times here and there. He'll still have value. That's why he's my number 9. Number 10, we have Vance McDonald, who has a pretty decent matchup against the Broncos defense this coming week. Vance McDonald has been great as of late, and thus far this season, he's been one of the biggest surprises in my opinion. As of the last 2 weeks, has scored a touchdown each of the last 2 weeks, and I think he can continue that streak this week. He's my number 10. Number 11, Cameron Brate, with the injury to O.J. Howard, which was honestly a surprise, kind of caught me off guard. I really didn't expect O.J. Howard to go onto the IR. The guy that was made of, the Terminator. He is literally the Terminator. He had sprained his MCL and took 1 week off and he was ready to go. Then all of a sudden, we're like, okay, he had an ankle injury. We're no big deal. Oh, there it is. O.J. Howard has been placed on the injured reserve. He was the Terminator. He came back and he feasted. He was having such a good year. In his second year in the NFL, the dude had already 100-plus fantasy points in 11 weeks. That's fantastic. He was one of the best tight ends. He was a top 6 tight end, in fact, in half-point PPR. He was looking great. Either way, Cameron Brate will be able to pick up where he left off. Not to the extent because he's not as talented or not as athletic, but he'll still be fantasy relevant. Number 12, we have Jordan Reed, who caught a touchdown this past week with Colt McCoy. Maybe that is something to look forward to. That's why I leave him at 12. Maybe he might be the only fantasy relevant option within this offense this week. So he's my number 12. Number 13, Jared Cook. Yes, Jared Cook found himself scoring a touchdown. I don't think he'll be able to do that against the Ravens this week. The defense is much better than the Cardinals defense, and they'll be able to clamp down on them. He's my number 13. Number 14, Evan Ingram, has a also difficult matchup against the Eagles this week, who don't really give up many points to the tight end position. Therefore, Evan Ingram, you could be struggling this week, and that offense of the New York Giants could be struggling other than Odell or Saquon. Moving on, CJ Uzomah, playing against the Cleveland defense. Uzomah had a decent week this past week. Nothing too much to get excited about. Had 5 points, right? 8's better than 0 points, I'll tell you that much. Then again, that's pretty much what we're going to talk about as we continue. Jeff Harriman, another guy that had 3 points. He had a decent amount of targets, more than I thought he would get. But then again, he had 4 fantasy points and a half-point PPR. Is that something to be proud of or, look forward to? No, but at least he put up 4 points. It's the tight end position. Moving on, Kyle Rudolph, another guy, been garbage all season long. Can we trust in him? I don't know. Can we? That's the question. But as of right now, I wouldn't really put too much into it. To be honest, Kyle Rudolph shouldn't be on this list, right? Ben Watson could be, he has a little bit of potential here and there. But let me tell you who should have been on this list. Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, and I'm looking at a couple extra names, perhaps Nick Fournette should be on this list because, again, the Panthers give up the most points to the tight end position. Nick Fournette can absolutely take advantage of that. On top of that, Chris Herndon could also be good this week. So those of you looking for some sneaky tight end plays, maybe hidden gems, Chris Herndon, Nick Fournette, they could be good options. Otherwise, that's basically it, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you all for watching. This has basically been my tight end, my wide receiver rankings, and my thought process going into week 12 of the fantasy football season. It's a big week for many of us who are trying to continue to have successful seasons or to at least get into those fantasy playoffs so we can at least have a fighter's chance. So I want to thank everybody for watching. Hope you guys have a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving tomorrow. Enjoy the time off from work. Many of you school. Enjoy it, and I will definitely enjoy my time off. Anyway, I'll see you guys on Friday with the Hidden Gems video, and until then, I will be answering questions down below, and I will be getting some shut-eye because I am very tired and I want to go to sleep. So thank you, everybody, and I'll see you guys next time.